This week on Art of the Air features traveler photographer Brian Keenan, whose photography covers stunning scenic vistas and creatures. Next, we feature adjunct professor and multimedia artist Emily Casella, whose work combines ceramic sculptures, photography, video, and more. Our spotlight is on Footlight Players' 74th season, featuring 6 productions with Lara West.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart.
Welcome. You're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, WVLP 103.1 FM, and WDSO 88.3 FM. Our weekly program covering the arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. I'm Larry Breckner of New Perspectives Photography, right alongside here with Esther Golden of The Nest in Michigan City.
Aloha, everyone.
We're your hosts for Art on the Air. Art on the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project Grant, South Shore Arts, and the National Endowment for the Arts. Art on the Air is heard every Sunday at 7 p.m. on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, also streaming live at lakeshorepublicmedia.org, and is available on Lakeshore Public Media's website as a podcast. Also heard on Friday at 11 a.m. and Monday at 5 p.m. on WVLP 103.1 FM, streaming live at wvlp.org, and Tuesdays at 4 p.m. on WDSO 88.3 FM. Our spotlight interviews are also heard Wednesdays on Lakeshore Public Media. Information about Art on the Air is available at our website, breck.com/AOTA. That includes a complete show archive, spotlight interviews, plus our show is available on multiple podcast platforms, including NPR One. Please like us on Facebook, Art on the Air, WVLP, for information about upcoming shows and interviews. And we'd like to welcome to Art on the Air Spotlight from the Footlight Players there in Michigan City. They've just closed Murder by Death. We'll talk a little bit about that, but we're meeting with Lara West, who directs and does costumes and a whole bunch of things, and she's going to talk about the next season. Lara, welcome back to Art on the Air Spotlight.
Hi, welcome.
Hello, thank you.
So, well, first of all, tell us how your last show went. What did you do in that? I think you were doing costumes on Murder by Death.
I did costumes. It's a Murder to Death. Yes.
Murder to Death.
Murder to Death, yes. I did costumes. My husband, Chris West, produced it, and the wonderful Dee Piotrowski directed it.
Excellent, excellent. Well, and that closed out, so now you're ready to embark on that. But before we talk about your season for next year, you are now doing a kind of a thing on what they call Footlight on Friday nights. So tell us a little bit about
Footlight.
that. Friday at Footlight. So tell us all about that.
Okay, our next Friday at Footlight event is going to be June 2nd at 7 p.m. And this is just an opportunity for anybody in the community that wants to share their talents. We originally thought of it as an open mic night, but it kind of turned into if you want to karaoke and sing along, if you want to do some improv with your favorite friends, if you just want to play the piano, whatever you want to do, you can come out, work a skit, read a poem, figure out what's going to work, and have an audience to entertain.
Oh, that's excellent. Is that something that maybe like you're looking at potential talent that you have never auditioned for Footlight? Like, oh, look, we got to get this person to come out for a show.
We do. We do have some of our directors. They do show up and they will say, oh, you know what? I saw somebody at the Friday at Footlight event. We actually recruited one for our summer program to help us play the piano. So we're hoping that's going to work out.
Right.
So is that filled up now, the summer program?
Yes, it has filled up, and that will be June 25th and 26th. Or no, 24th and 25th will be the summer show dates.
Do you have a wait list for that, just in case?
We do. Yes, you can go to our website, and you can kids can still sign up to join the wait list.
Great.
Anything else going on in summer besides that? Do you have like things that, well, we need to fix this and do that as a kind of like a downtime so you can fix a few things in the theater?
Yes, we do have some maintenance days scheduled, and we usually put those on Facebook at the Footlight and Friends page on Facebook and also on our website.
Very good. Well, now we want to talk about the season. You got a whole new 2023-24 season and got some fun things there. And that's your 74th season. Wow, that's a long time for Footlight. So why don't you tell us about each of the shows?
Okay. Well, coming up in August, the 4th through the 6th, 11th through 13th, 18th through 20th, we have The Dastardly Dr. Devereaux, which is a melodrama musical. So it's a little bit over the top, fun show. It's not real popular, so it's one that you just have to take a chance on. But with names like Dog's Breath Devereaux, Nurse Ivy Drip, Dr. Feelgood, Lotta Cash, who's not going to have a good time at that show? And that is directed by the wonderful Laura Meyer.
Okay.
So she will be doing that one for us in August.
And curiosity, let's talk about auditions. How long before each show are going to be auditions?
About 2 months.
2 months? Okay.
Yep, about 2 months, 6 weeks or so. And then, it all falls together pretty quickly. In October, we have Four Old Broads on the High Seas. This is the continuation of Four Old Broads that we did last October. It will be directed by Robert Comandera again, so Bobby will be there. And this one starts right where they left off with the other one, but you don't have to have come for the other one to know
it. Are you going to have the same cast continue on with that?
Yes.
Okay, so you'll have the Leslie Evans and everything like that in that. So
yes, we do.
Very good. So
they will be there for that one. And that one, of course, on the high seas, it's going to happen on a ship.
Okay.
That's going to be fun. In December, we have Murder on the Rerun. It is going to be directed by Michael Thomas. And this one is about a Hollywood screenwriter and a bunch of her friends. They get together. Oops, there's an accident, and she is dead. And then her ghost comes back and tries to figure out what exactly happened to her in a series of hysterical components that all come together.
Excellent.
Is there a holiday theme to it?
So it does take place at a ski chalet. So we're going to pull in the Christmas theme there.
Good.
Yeah, the play reading committee, we went a little bit different this way with the December show. There are just too many really, really good shows. So Michael really wanted that, and we got it in there for December. Following that, in March, we have The Unsinkable Molly Brown, which is also another musical. It's our other big musical. It tells the story of the unsinkable Molly Brown, just kind of going through life up until, the big events we all know her from the Titanic, I guess. So that's going to be fun. And that one is going to be directed by Nikki Anthony. And then in May of 2024, we have The Lost Boy, which will be directed by myself. And I'm really excited about it. That is the story of the author of Peter Pan, James M. Barrie, and kind of a take on how he might have created Peter Pan and all of the story that comes with it. So it is a drama. It has a few comical lines, but it's a drama, and that'll be in May.
Wow.
How many people in that cast?
That can have a flexible cast from 7 to 14. To 14 people.
Well, sounds like a very busy season. So tell us how we can find out about Footlight on online and location and everything real quick.
Okay, we are located at 1705 Franklin Street in Michigan City. We have our website at footlightplayers.org, and that is where we put all the information. And you can also find us on all the social medias.
Well, Lara West, thank you so much for coming on Art on the Air Spotlight, Footlight Players, and their 74th season.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You guys have a good day.
Art on the Air Spotlight and the complete one-hour program on Lakeshore Public Media is brought to you by McCauley Real Estate in Valparaiso, Olga Patrician, Senior Broker. And as a reminder, if you'd like to have your event on Art on the Air Spotlight or have a longer feature interview, email us at aota@brec.com. That's aota@brec.com. You're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Media 89.1 FM, on WVLP 103.1 FM, and WDSO 88.3 FM.
We would like to welcome Brian Keenan to Art on the Air. Brian is a photographer, traveler, and a UX agency co-founder of OpenField. He is an avid student and practitioner of wildlife and landscape photography, which pairs well with his love of road tripping and exploring vast and wild destinations. Thank you, Brian, for joining us on Art on the Air. Aloha and welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You.
Happy to be here.
Well, Brian, we always like to find out a little bit about the origin story of our guests, and how I always tee that up is how you get from where you were to where you are now. So tell us all about yourself.
Sure. I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. I live here currently, but haven't always. When I think back to growing up, it was a pretty simple suburban Midwestern upbringing. But I had parents and teachers who always encouraged creative projects, who supported interest in that, and that really is kind of the start of a lifelong love of art, design, and photography. I had a high school art teacher who was instrumental in my career in probably more ways than I realized, because she was the one who suggested, you got to look into this thing called graphic design. And I didn't know what that was. So I thought, oh, okay. And just so happened that the University of Cincinnati had one of the top design schools in the world, and ended up applying there. But she really exposed us along the way to a lot of artists that weren't the household names that every one knew about. People like Christo and George Siegel, and she would have us do projects in their vein, and which we just thought was really cool and different.
Very cool.
Yeah. In high school, I think I thought the best artists were the ones who could make something look like a photograph. And that was very naive, but that's how I saw it. And so she kind of showed us other things were going on and what was possible. And eventually went to the University of Cincinnati Design, Art and Architecture College, and studied graphic design. And that's been my career to date, although it's changed along the way. And that was pretty much formed my view on a lot of things about the work we do now.
Were you the child then who was always taking something and thinking I could do this much better?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I remember trying to make Star Wars action figures out of plaster of Paris, and probably failing on that. But I still somehow remember that, and drawing football helmets for teams for friends, and them paying me, little things like that. So always making things and enjoying that along the way.
Before we move on to your photography, I'd like to explore a little bit of your graphic design work, because that's a, interesting art area also. So tell us a little bit about that before we move on to your fine art photography.
Yeah. So I went to, as I mentioned, the University of Cincinnati. They had a co-op program. So it was a 5-year program, and starting in about year 3, you would start alternating co-op, basically paid internship quarters, and alternating that with in school. So school was all theory, studying the color theory, topography, composition, all of that. And their take on it was that actually going out and doing the design work on things that were commercial bound, that's the job of co-op. We just teach you the formal stuff here. So that was really great. We got exposed to a lot of things, and the network out there was just amazing. You could have, kids coming out of the Midwest, moving to San Francisco into jobs that were there waiting for them. And I co-opted in Boston and was pretty convinced I wanted to move there, and didn't know exactly what kind of design I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to stay in Cincinnati, which at the time was very dominated by packaging work, because P&G is here. So that just wasn't that interesting to me. And Boston woke me up to a lot of really cool things from the landscape up there, and moving away for the first time, living on my own, working with real designers, was very, very, just set me on that path of wanting to see what else was out there. And
what type of projects would you be involved with in that design?
yeah, early on, it was a lot of brand work, for lots of different companies. And but there was so many. The great thing about graphic design is you can go into so many areas, and we got a taste of a lot of different types of projects. I worked for companies who worked on environmental graphic design projects, so wayfinding systems that built structures around the world. I went to work for a company at a school that had done a lot of work with the World Cup. So, if you think of temporary events like that, someone has to come in and brand them and build structures and dress the stadiums. And that was really cool, interesting experience. Back then, the internet really wasn't a thing until about, I guess, the late 90s, mid to late 90s, before it started showing up on offices, and just as a curiosity more than anything at the time. And that's really where we are today with a company that I started with two friends. That Open Field is the name. And we've really moved away from graphic design over the years and into the user experience design. So we do UX research and design. And then along the way, we started working with educational companies because we just happened to pick up a couple clients here and there along the way, a decade ago, and found we really loved that work because it felt great to be a part of working on a software or app product that was specifically designed to help people teach or learn, rather than just to sell ideas to people, which is really what, a lot of the corporate work and the advertising that I'd been a part of was geared toward. So that's what Open Field does today, is that niche, and it's really renewed that career for me along the way.
So within that company, are you also taking care of the interface, the UI as well?
Yeah.
Or? Okay.
Yep. We don't do any of the coding anymore. Most of our clients do that, have their own engineering teams. And so that frees us to focus on the user experience, which includes the UI. And then the cool part along the way is that we started hiring researchers because we need to test the products with people using them and find out where the problems are and solve those.
And so the photography, when does that come in your history?
Yeah.
The travel and the photography.
Yeah. Well, I first took a high school photography class. So that was really my first introduction. And, I enjoyed that a lot. We printed in a dark room, and then as part of the design curriculum at UC, they required us. It was, every year we were involved in taking photography classes. And I think the theory there was that, in graphic design, you will either use photography that you make in the work you do, or you will work with photographers as you commission things for work that you're doing. And that was great. Being able to work in that old way of film and darkroom was a cool experience. I don't miss that part of it, but that's where it really got its roots.
So moving from film, tell us about that experience into digital, maybe the process of that. I know just for me, I held on to film, not because I love film so much, as that the cost of going into like a whole new set of lenses, and I skipped like the whole EOS film era, but finally went digital when the 5D came out as the full frame. So tell us about your experience in that transition.
Yeah, well, I mainly watched that happen. A lot of the traveling and work we did after my now wife and I had moved to Los Angeles because I had a job offer with one of the companies that I worked with in Boston, and they were opening an LA office, and they kind of tricked the co-ops into going out there for their first job because I think people didn't want to move out there for some reason. But anyway, that was the start of really traveling around all these vast landscapes out there and So we still did a lot of film photography as we did that. And we weren't developing it. We were having labs develop it. And then, I watched all these professional photographers that we worked with, that we commissioned for various types of corporate work we were doing, watch them deal with that era. And it was really interesting because they were, it was a very tense time. The first time you hired someone who had been working with you for years and he or she was going to use digital instead of film, it was kind of a very nervous experience of like, okay, well, is the technology going to fail? Do you know it? Our whole project could crash and burn if this doesn't work out. And so I didn't really have to go through that as much as they did, but I got to learn from it still. So that was my early watching that happen with a lot of people I worked with.
So looking at that, when you personally made the switch, at what point did you say, okay, goodbye film, hello digital?
Yeah, I'd say probably 15 to 18 years ago is when I really got my first digital camera and, immediately felt good to me. Again, it freed me from having to worry about the film, how much film was in the camera. I could suddenly shoot more. I could shoot throwaway mode if I wanted to, which allowed, some happy accidents to happen along the way. And then the iPhone came along in, I guess, 2007. And it really just sort of, I became so interested in that because of the type of work we were doing on the professional side. And that I think it drew my attention away from shooting with, more sophisticated cameras because it was this new novel thing. And then I think for a number of years, I was shooting with that a lot because it was the new thing. And then as our daughter started to get older and was doing more activities and we were traveling more with her, I decided to rededicate myself back to the DSLR world and get serious again about starting to build up my equipment. So I sort of started fresh again, 12 to 15 years ago and, really got serious.
I know Larry's aching to ask this question, so I'll let him ask it.
Are you a Nikon or Canon shooter?
Well, I was a Canon shooter.
Okay.
But because I was only shooting landscapes, I had a very slow camera, the 5 DSR, and it was great, but they call it a brick for a reason. It's just a big slug, slow camera, and you don't need it to be fast if you're shooting landscapes because they typically don't move.
Right.
So, but I switched to Sony about 3 years ago and decided to go with mirrorless. I like technology. I'm kind of a little bit of a gearhead when it comes to that. And, I just decided that was where the future of the technology was going and I should make that leap. And I was going to have to buy all new lenses anyway. And they were already into their curve of developing their mirrorless technology. So that's what I shoot now. But they're all great.
Well, and Sony has led the mirrorless revolution. Canon and Nikon are catching up and everything. So it's how that development is, and that's good for all the digital industry. I do have the 5 DSR that I do for actually wildlife, believe it or not, and some landscape things. And real quick, my story of that is because I was weighing and getting like a 500 or 600 millimeter prime lens or upgrade to that. And I decided to do that because with my 200 millimeter zoom, I can still get decent image, crop it in and have a decent, and I usually blow my stuff up to like 20 by 30 or so. So I understand that. And I'm probably going to stay with the DSLR because I'm too old to go flip all that yet again. So. So you're traveling, you now have your Sony, and so tell us a little bit about your photography.
Yeah, I mean, I went from, it was all about landscapes early on, and then we moved back to Cincinnati because we wanted to start a family, near family, and so that's what we did. And suddenly I didn't have these grand landscapes to walk out into, drive there every weekend like we had when we were living in Los Angeles, and I, so it became a thing that I could do when we traveled. And we only travel so many times a year. And it's just, that's the type of landscapes I always loved. And so I started to get more interested in wildlife photography and, birding really is the easiest thing because they're just everywhere. And it really doesn't matter where you live. So that's, today it's become flipped. I really enjoy the wildlife bird photography much more than the landscape, even though I'll never stop loving that.
Yeah, you've taken so many majestic landscape images.
Yeah, thanks. And that's something I still look forward to it. When we travel, I go into the mode of like, now I'm just going to focus on landscape because we're going to locations and hiking and things. And then if I get some wildlife along the way, that's great. But so it's a nice pairing the two things because, you can't shoot animals without being in a landscape really. But I just found, especially during the pandemic, it was a reason to get outside. And that's really when it took off. Like so many millions of people became birders during the pandemic. And, I certainly went from someone who enjoyed, photographing birds and wildlife to someone who was doing it nearly every day, out in the morning or in the evening when the light's best. And that's been really interesting because there's a lot to learn there while you're creating images.
It's like just a fraction, you just breathe and you'll miss that shot. And so you are so good at capturing interesting wing movements and formations. Just they're very they're just so delightful, actually.
Yeah, thanks. It's really, we're fortunate to live. I have great locations I can get to within 15 to 30 minutes of my house, but we also butt up to woods. So we have like all these great birds and animals right outside our window. And so the benefit of seeing them every single day is that, instead of just getting a pileated woodpecker perched, I can, sort of bide my time and just focus on the flight shots, which is what I've been doing more of. So it's a great balance with the professional work I do on the design side to be able to, they really inform each other. The design background, learning about everything we learned in college and the work I've done for decades now, certainly affects how I see and process, images and while I'm, out shooting. So it's been great.
Plans for travels?
Yeah. This summer we're going to Whistler up in Canada for a week, and then later in the summer with our daughter, we're going to Switzerland for a couple weeks. I haven't been there, so I'm looking forward to that.
Brian, I'm interested in your post-processing. What do you do, or how much do you do, and what do you use to do it?
Yeah, I use a combination of Photoshop and Lightroom. I enjoy all the phases of photography. I enjoy processing as much as shooting. And that's kind of my workflow. I don't use Photoshop a lot unless I really need to kind of get in and maybe take a weird looking stick out of an image behind a bird, but I try not to do that much. I've gone from probably over processing years ago to like trying to process only as much as is required. I don't want an image to look overcooked in terms of saturation or whatnot. So,
yeah, and that's and do you like Lightroom for like quick stuff and Photoshop for your more deep ups, or how's your comparison there?
Yeah, I think of Lightroom as the quick stuff. I can do most 99% of what I want to do in that. And again, Photoshop is the more complex stuff. I just have the benefit of knowing that from the work I've done for so many years.
And of course, I'm sure you're a raw shooter, I would imagine.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You can get so much more out of an image.
Is there anything you'd like to shoot that you haven't done so far? Something you say, I really want to get someplace or some wildlife that you haven't done.
Yeah, probably for both wildlife and landscape, I'd really like to get into more down into Antarctica, just those polar regions where, there's just a few colors out there, and everything's stark, and you can find polar bears and puffin, and we went to Iceland a number of years ago, and that was a little bit of a taste of that. So that's really the bucket list, that or the Faroe Islands, if you're familiar with that location. Yeah. So yeah, that's Norway as well.
Oh, sure.
Those icy sort of locations.
So those would be very, you might say, cool for the pun, though. So you talked a little bit about your equipment and process. Now we'd like to talk, and we have about 2 minutes here left, about your website. And you do any exhibiting also, take in galleries and things?
Yeah, I haven't, because I don't view the work as something I'm trying to promote for a living. Although, I've had a lot of people ask, can I print? Can I get them a print? And I certainly can. So my work is on my site at Brian with an I, KeenanPhotography.com. And, I update that periodically. But really I use Instagram. So if you look up Brian Keenan Photography on Instagram, that's where you'll find me posting once or twice a day. And that's the freshest work, caught that day, I guess.
The shot of the day. So we have about a minute left, but briefly, how did COVID impact you? And it seemed like maybe you stimulated to go out and do more photography. So real quick as we wrap up here in a minute.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what it was for me. Obviously, it was overall not a good thing, but that got me out more. It forced me to not, we weren't traveling, we weren't going to restaurants, and it just, kind of resurfaced this love of nature and even more, and shooting daily really started then.
Excellent. So give us your website and or Instagram one more time before we wrap it up here.
Sure. It's BrianKeenanPhotography.com, and on Instagram it's also Brian Keenan Photography.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate you coming on Art in the Air. That's Brian Keenan, and you hope you can take a look at his wildlife and his scenic photography. We thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your photographic vision.
Yeah,
Great.
Thank you so much, Brian.
Great talking to you guys.
Art in the Air listeners, do you have a suggestion for a possible guest on our show? Whether it's an artist, musician, author, gallery, theater, concert, or some other artistic endeavor that you are aware of, or a topic of interest to our listeners. Email us at aota@brech.com. That's aota@brech.com.
I am writer, television, and radio personality Mark Edward Willows, and you're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Media 89.1 FM and on WVLP 103.1 FM.
Art in the Air is now available on WDSO 88.3 FM Chesterton on Tuesdays at 4 p.m.
We would like to welcome Emily Casella to Art on the Air. Emily is a multimedia artist and educator focusing on ceramics, drawing, photography, and video. Thank you, Emily, for joining us on Art on the Air. Aloha and welcome. Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Excited.
We're very excited to have you on. And like we like to start out all of our Art in the Air segments, we want to find out about you and your background, your whole origin story, and like I like to say,
the whole thing.
Okay.
How you got from where you were to where you are now. So tell us about yourself.
Yes. So I grew up in Valparaiso. I've been here my whole life, except when I went to grad school. We went to a Montessori school in Hobart, Indiana, from first, and I was up until 7th grade. And we had an art teacher there named Miss Robin, and every year she would have us have clay at least once or twice a year, and then she would have other things that like paper making and drawing ourselves on, like outlining ourselves and then painting it and all of that. And she showed us like Picasso, Hopper. So I have all these like memories of learning about these like artists people, and I wasn't really sure like that was a job. I just thought they were like weird people who did stuff. And then she also took she took us to the Art Institute of Chicago, a Frank Lloyd Wright house. And when Millennium Park first opened up in 2003, we went and saw this like new amazing park with like the fountains and the bean and all of that. So she really like started me off on this art adventure. And I have like small drawings that I made of like Man Ray's chess set and Marcel Duchamp's hat rack. And so these, I have all these like art memories, and like seeing a Magritte image for the first time is like ingrained in my head. And so after I left there, I found art again in high school at Portage High School, where I graduated from. And I was very a very shy, anxious person because we moved schools. And so I found my voice in like things that I could do that I knew that I liked through that. And so I took ceramics. I had Paula Weezy, who then shoved me out into going into art for college because I wanted to be a teacher. So that's really how that's my like young person adventure through art. And so I just kept going with it. I did drawing and ceramics and photography in high school. And then I went to Indiana University Northwest, where I went to get a BFA, where I focused on ceramics and photography. I really wanted to be somebody who drew things. But at that time, it wasn't really set up. Like there's always a bunch of different adjuncts. And so in that time, I just focused on ceramics and photography. And then I went to Heron School of Art and Design, and I got a master's in ceramics. And through all that time, I just did a bunch of different artwork. I also was able to do video and YouTube throughout that because my dad and my mom both were grant winners, and they won a lot of money for their schools to do these like innovative projects. And so my dad's project was to get like a camera and a Mac laptop and video editing equipment. So by the age of 13, I was editing stuff, and I just continued to do that until now. So it's mostly like travel vlogs and whatnot.
Oh, that's so fortunate.
Yeah. So I was really like in a good area. I was very fortunate in getting a lot of art around me, and I didn't really know that I wanted to be an artist or if that was a real thing you could do until I committed in undergrad. And then I'm like, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And so that's what I've been doing.
It's wonderful to have a supportive family as well.
So what do you consider your primary art ceramics, but you talked about a whole bunch of other things like photography and everything. So how does that all incorporate? I mean, and you maybe talk about each one of those, like what you've done in photography and what some of the other things like that.
Yeah. So I call myself a multimedia artist because what I like to do is mix and combine these art forms. And I was really interested in undergrad in this idea of having ceramics that last forever with this kind of paper object that records a moment forever, and kind of having those two play together. And then with photography, that's more like my professional. I was able to get jobs, and I photographed large collections for different organizations and libraries. And then with ceramics, I only do sculpture, like with ceramics. I'm not big on pottery or like mold making. I'm more interested in using ceramics as like a medium to convey a human in a figure. And then
so you're not making functional wear at all.
No, yes, I do not make unless I need something to be like a prop in a video, and then I'll make like a functional like ceramic cup or something. But it's more about like this idea of making something that can incorporate encapsulate a person's backstory or this story that I'm trying to tell into this ceramic object. And then I also put video into some of the pieces, like the Time Critter and the Consumer piece, where I project the video into the ceramic objects. And I have two of those pieces where there's video inside the ceramics.
So the whole dry ice series too, with those teapots, that was specifically for that rather than making like a series of teapots, right? You were, it was sort of an installation type of experiment, or?
That is so funny. So with the dry ice, I was interested in capturing the movement with it, but what happens with like what I'll do, because I'm also a professor, and so when I was teaching drawing, I bring dry ice for them to like draw in charcoal. So that's part of like the charcoal drawings. And so my dad likes to use dry ice with his students to talk about like changes of states of matter. And so every Halloween, we always seem to have dry ice. And so I like to incorporate them into the teapots or like other pots that I was making. Well, I like making teapots sometimes, like that look like birds or figures. And I was like, well, what would happen if I put the dry ice into it and it just flows out? And so I'll bring like my ceramics with holes and vessel things to my classrooms and then have the dry ice float out while the students draw it with charcoal.
Fun.
So tell us about some of the exhibits you've had. I was looking at your CV, and you've got quite a few things before we talk about what's coming up for you. But tell us about where you've been on display.
Yeah, so I have had pieces in the Women Made Gallery in Chicago. They always have these like themes, and then you can submit your work that you think goes along with the theme. So I was able to get into a show during COVID, and there was an online show. And then after COVID last year, 2 years ago, 2021, they had a theme about food. And so I brought in my religious center, which is me making a smoothie in the style of like a Catholic ritual ceremony for communion. And so I got into that. And then I also was able to do in Elgin, Illinois, there was a off the wall 2022 exhibit. And I brought the time critter and the consumer to that exhibit. And then also the Union Street Gallery I was in because one of my students asked me to be part of her first ever exhibition curating. So those are the Illinois places. And then I also got into a library year with a Watchman. Another one of my pieces was able to stay at the town village hall for a year. So those are the Illinois things that I've done. And then I've been also in like the South Shore in Munster, and then a few other online shows like the Best American Artist. That was the Holy Gallery. They did an online exhibition with artists from America where you could navigate in the virtual gallery, and then you could put up like a collection of your work, and then you have like this whole section in the virtual wall where people can go and look. And they had different rooms that the American artists were set in. So
with everything you're doing, when do you have time? Do you have time to create a new body of work? And are you working on like the next thing?
Yes. So my next big project is going to be at the Chesterton Arts Center. And it's from July 7th to August 30th. So it's coming up soon. But the title is In Emotion on in Train. And it is my first solo show after my grad school and undergrad, out of school solo show. And I'm incorporating drawing, large scale drawings, large ceramic pieces, and graphic design maps and like elements to create an underground train station that the viewers can go to, like a kiosk, and then they go inside the train, and then they go down the ramp into a neighborhood that's going to be like 3-dimensional, and drawings that aren't going to be encapsulated in glass, and also a thing of a platform of pigeons.
And so how long does it take you to have that come to fruition? How long had you been working on it?
Yes. So usually I think about a piece a year before I actually get to make it. And so I was working on this large drawing for a whole year, and that was from 2021 to 2022, of this train car. And these people were all looking at each other from across the way. And it's a diptych piece. So they're separated by frame. And so they're looking at each other. And then I was thinking about how in life we have all of these moments that are kind of like stopping points, and how in life we have all of these different steps that we have to take or that we could take, and how very confusing that all is. So this installation exhibition at the Chesterton Arts Center really talks about how we go from one path to the next in life, and like how does that talk about like love and building your career and family and religion and all of these different aspects, and how like you personally feel about that, as well as how like society feels about that.
You're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Media 89.1 FM, on WVLP 103.1 FM, and WDSO 88.3 FM. One of the things I was looking at is I Can't Blink, and it's a combination of a photographic, video, and ceramic installation. So tell us a little bit about that for our audience who can't see it. You can see it on your website, but maybe explain how that works.
Yes, so that is an older piece I made in 2018, and it is a video that's projected onto the wall, but it is the memory of the ceramic person with these texts exchanged between the ceramic person and this other person who's off into the world. And so I took the ceramic person that they're communicating with out into the world, like in the snow, in society, and I photographed them in different places, and I also video recorded them in different places. And so it tells the story about like them having this text exchange, and because they're ceramic, they can't really do like bodily functions, and so they bond over the fact that they can't cry. And then what ends up happening is that they lose contact with the other person, and so the one person who's left is thinking that maybe that person died, or like the worst case scenario happened to them. And so then eventually they do realize that they, formed like this emotional connection to that person.
So I am seeing that like a lot of your work, of course, has social and community issues at the heart of it. So, and you said just now that it takes about a year before you can start on something. So where are you now in your process? Do you have like an issue that you're thinking about for your next work after this exhibit that's coming up?
Well, right now I'm so like in creating this the exhibition right now, because there's still things I have to make and finish up. But so I'm still in this world, and I don't quite know what the next world is going to be, because I always like to have a theme, or like a place where all of my people can kind of coexist, because they aren't like stylistically or thematically really similar, because they're own like individual people and whatnot. But so I don't really know. I haven't got anything yet on what I'm going to do after this. Because I'm just stuck in this train right now, this
Sure.
train of this like underground train.
Then how far, so where do you see it going after here? Because where would you like to see it installed next, the train?
I would like to see it installed in another state, because I've only been in Indiana and Illinois. So some other states, if ideally like to like take some on like a tour through different galleries. And I think I have enough of that where I could, aspire to do that dream.
Oh, that's exciting.
Oh, yeah. I was looking at some of your other things that you've done, like oil pastels. One of them was You Pulled Me, you did in 2020. And while it looks almost like a child's drawing, I don't know if that's what you were going for, but there is a very like childlike look in your way you have your characters doing things there. So maybe describe some of that work that you've done, like in two-dimensional work.
Yeah, so during COVID, I did a lot of drawing and like experimenting with 2D. And so those pieces are kind of like snapshots of people's thought processes. And so like you pull me, there's like this kid getting pulled away from this crow by its dad, but then it's also like these two pools of water where these two like teenagers are like looking into it. And so there's also this idea of like how, like what are we getting pulled towards or pulled away from? And is that what we want? Like, is that a desire that we have that we want to explore? Or is it something that we're going to be pulled away from by somebody else not wanting us to explore that?
Yeah, they're very interesting. You have a whole series, like change of scenery. You did this all, I mean, it looks like this whole series during COVID. So was COVID kind of a productive period for you, and how did it impact you, like both personally and like in your art process?
Yeah, so COVID was very busy for me and my family because we're all teachers. And so everybody had to switch online. And so there's 4 of us. And so we were constantly making videos to give to students. We were constantly doing all of these things for our jobs. And I was also like, that's where I got a lot of my, like working at IUN, working at South Shore, Munster, Ivy Tech, all of that happened during COVID because they needed somebody to do the jobs. So I did. And so when I was doing those jobs, I was a lot of these two-dimensional mediums. And so I was like, well, if I'm teaching these two-dimensional mediums, I should probably like explore that myself. And so I got inspired a lot by that to do more drawing and color pencil work.
So what do you teach at? You're teaching at IUN now, is that correct?
No, I am not teaching anymore. I taught there for the last 2 years, but now I'm still at Ivy Tech, and I just am about to finish a ceramic course at South Suburban College in South Holland, Illinois.
So do you have all your own? So do you have a working studio, a ceramic working studio, a kiln that you have easy access to? And
I am very fortunate to be involved with all the art centers and the colleges where I can use their kilns if I need to. And so like for my upcoming show, I've been making a new giant porcelain, and they have a large oval kiln. So I'm going to be firing it at the college.
Oh, excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Very lucky.
Yeah. Sounds good. Well, I know Esther asked you about your future work and everything like that, but tell us a little bit about maybe some of the things you like to do away from art.
Well, you know what? Me and my sister go to contra dancing, and it's in Michigan City. It's the Hoosier Recruits play live music, and they teach contra dancing classes, and that's the only thing we really do besides watching TV. So I'm just so in art all the time that I don't really have anything else to do besides maybe walk.
Walk. Anything like teaching in your future? You're talking about you're doing the classes at Ivy Tech, but are you looking for like maybe landing like a tenure track type thing?
That would be nice. I just don't know where that would be settling yet. I am going to still be teaching at South Suburban for photography and graphic design in the fall. And then I'm still going to be teaching graphic design, which I've been doing for the last 3 years at Ivy Tech. So I'm just at this point where, I can teach a lot of these different courses, and I've been just, excited to, and I also teach at, workshops at Chesterton and Munster. So I just like teaching at these different places, and I've built quite a nice community around in all these different spots. So
sounds very ideal.
Yeah, it does. So let's say you're talking to like students that are interested in going into like your type of art, ceramics and things like that. What advice would you give them?
I would give them the advice of follow what you want to make. A lot of the times we get so bogged down by what other people want us to make, or that we have to stay in some sort of artist lane. But really, an artist is just somebody who makes something. So if you want to make your idea out of drawing or painting or printmaking or maybe a combination of all of those things, do all of the things and just see how all these things work together to make your vision come to life.
Well, we just have about a minute left, so I want to give you an opportunity to tell us about how people can see your work online. Remind us about your Chesterton Arts Center exhibit coming up, and just tell us anything else that we might have missed in the interview.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram and online at Emily J. Casella. And then my website is just emilyjcasella.com.
And also the dates for your show.
Oh, yes. And so my solo show at the Chesterton Arts Center is from July 7th through August 30th. And the reception is July 15th. So please come to that. That would be a lot of fun.
Very good. Well, appreciate you sharing your whole story, your art journey and everything with us on Art in the Air. And we look forward to that. That's Chesterton Arts Center, July 7th through the 30th, with the 15th as the reception. We have Emily Casella here. Thank you so much for coming on. And you can see her work at emilyjcasella.com. Thanks for coming on Art in the Air.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'd like to thank our guest this week on Art in the Air, our weekly program covering the arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. Art on the Air is heard Sunday at 7 p.m. on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, also streaming live at lakeshorepublicmedia.org, and is available on Lakeshore Public Media's website as a podcast. Art on the Air is also heard Friday at 11 a.m. and Monday at 5 p.m. on WVLP 103.1 FM, streaming live at wvlp.org, and Tuesdays at 4 p.m. on WDSO 88.3 FM. Our Spotlight interviews are heard every Wednesday on Lakeshore Public Media. Thanks to Tom Maloney, Vice President of Radio Operation for Lakeshore Public Media, and Greg Kovach, WVLP's Station Manager. Our theme music is by Billy Foster with a vocal by Renee Foster. Art on the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project Grant, South Shore Arts, and the National Endowment for the Arts. We'd like to thank our current underwriters for Lakeshore Public Media, McCauley Real Estate in Valparaiso, Olga Patrician, Senior Broker. And for WVLP, Walt Breidinger of Paragon Investments. So we may continue to bring you Art in the Air. We rely on you, our listeners and underwriters, for ongoing financial support. If you're looking to support Art in the Air, we have information on our website at breck.com/AOTA, where you can find out how to become a supporter or underwriter of our program in whatever amount you are able. And like I say every week, don't give till it hurts. Give till it feels good. You'll feel so good about supporting Art on the Air. If you're interested in being a guest or send us information about your arts-related event or exhibit, please email us at aota@breck.com. That's aota@breck.com, or contact us through our Facebook page. Your hosts were Larry Breckner and Esther Golden, and we invite you back next week for another episode of Art on the Air.
Aloha, everyone. Have a splendid week.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the Air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the Air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world